Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Premier Injuries Daily Roundup. Now, we're still in the midst of double game week 36. Leicester entertain Liverpool at the King Power Stadium on Monday night. And, of course, Newcastle play Brighton on Thursday. But for now, we have one or two key injuries to update you on. And we'll kick off with Brentford. Now, it was a little bit of surprise to see former Newcastle United striker Ivan Toney out of the B squad at the weekend. Indeed, there was no mention from Thomas Frank of an injury to the club's leading goal scorer. Kept his cards very close to his chest. However, it was revealed after the teams were announced that Toney had picked up a minor hamstring strain, and that wasn't in training. That was from the Liverpool match 7 days earlier. But good news, hopefully, for the Bees fans. Thomas Frank remains fairly optimistic that he will recover in time for that Tottenham game. That's the early one next Saturday, game week 37. West Ham United, the visitors on the day, well, they made several changes, a wholesale changes, 9 from that game on Thursday night against AZ Alkmaar in that Europa Conference League game. Second leg, semi-final coming up this weekend. Hopefully, Mikel Antonio will be back in the Hammer squad. You understand that was a calf problem. We did hear from David Moyes on Friday, but that was less than 12 hours. Sorry, not 12 hours, 20 hours after that 2-1 semi-final win over AZ in the first game. And the extent of the problem was still unknown. However, it now seems as if it was more of a precautionary measure. And like I say, Mikel Arteta should be back in that Hammer squad for that game. Elsewhere, the result against Brighton all but extinguishes Arsenal's hopes of pushing for that Premier League title. Of course, they were beaten 3-0 at home to Brighton. Now, that result was compounded by the fact that Gabriel Martinelli was taken off with an injury, probably fortunate to maybe still be on the pitch for that challenge on Karim Mitoma, that forearm in the face. A little bit lucky on another day, may have picked up a red card. However, he ended up going off with an ankle problem. Video footage, that mechanism suggested that it looks like a high ankle sprain, the way that enforced high force rotation external of the talus outwards, very indicative of that high ankle sprain. Much worse than a normal typical ankle sprain. We did see in post-match in that calm boot. Now, they are normally applied as a precautionary measure. We've seen that in recent times with Bruno Fernandes. They'll put that on just to manage the situation until he can be evaluated further. Will probably be sent for an MRI scan to determine the extent of that. But either way, the chances are he could miss those remaining matches. Also, Zinchenko was out of the squad at the weekend. Kieran Tierney coming in for the Gunners now. David Ornstein had confirmed that the fullback was likely to miss the rest of the season with a calf problem. However, that was denied by Mikel Arteta. But again, context around this. If Arsenal have indeed lost the league, then there's no chances being taken with Zinchenko. They'll want to keep him right and allow him that process to heal fully. So we'll wait and see with that one. But like I say, there are big question marks remaining over Zinchenko's reappearance this season. For Everton, we've seen one change at the weekend, but it's not what we expected. It was a recall for Mason Holgate, and Holgate was coming in for Vitaly Mikhailichenko. That was because he picked up a thigh problem in training on Saturday. Now, it isn't believed to be anything too serious, but suffice to say, it kept him out of this one. And of course, Everton need all of their players back in fighting to try and beat that drop. Elsewhere on Saturday, the big news for the Eagles, there's been another setback for Wilfried Zaha. Unfortunately, that's hamstring related, and you've got to think that that's going to keep him out of those remaining matches. Post-game, we did hear from Roy Hodgson. He was very non-committal. Of course, he didn't want to give any kind of definitive answers when assessments were still being undertaken. But the fact that he pulled up while sprinting, that's fairly indicative of the fact that it could be, high up. Maybe that bicep femoris. We're looking at a minimum of maybe 2 to 3 weeks with that one. We have seen Zaha. We know he's a quick healer, but he did suffer a hamstring problem earlier in the season, and that kept him out for around about 6 weeks. Elsewhere at the weekend, Aston Villa, we heard from Unai Emery, spoke about the fact that he more or less had a clean bill of health across the squad, the only exception being Jed Steer, who ruptured his Achilles while on loan at Luton last season. That was on Thursday. However, on Friday, Philip Coutinho picked up another injury in training, keeping him out of the game. He spent a significant spell on the sidelines after injuring his hamstring earlier in the year, and we've yet to see him back on the pitches. For Newcastle at Ellen Road, the early kickoff, we've seen Miguel Almiron come in for Jacob Murphy. At first, we thought that it was just a bit of a tactical switch from Eddie Howe. He had spoken about the South American, how he's approaching full fitness following his recent hamstring problem, but it was more of a precautionary measure as well, as Jacob Murphy is managing a slight adductor issue. Of course, nothing to keep him out, but again, no need to risk him when you have Almiron on the bench there, and was able to come into the squad. So he's potentially a returner on Thursday. For Chelsea, N'Golo Kante, he's suffered another setback on the training pitches. Not to be totally unexpected, as players are reacclimated to playing in the Premier League. It's not uncommon to pick up little knocks and niggles, but this is a groin injury and an adductor problem this time. And like I say, even if it isn't severe, you've got to look at the player's history and where we are in the league and how Chelsea are performing, and question, whether it is worth taking any risks and throwing him back in the mix. For Manchester United, the big talking point heading into game week 36 was the fitness of Marcus Rashford. That's a fairly nondescript lower leg injury. Eric Ten Hag referenced the fact that he was initially doubtful, but then he added on that it was much more than that. He was a major doubt. They're going to be doing everything they can to try and get him back for that double game week. Of course, Manchester United vying with Newcastle United for the Champions League spot, with Liverpool breathing down the necks, and also Brighton in the mix following that great result at the Emirates. One bit of good news from Old Trafford, from Eric Ten Hag: Scott McTominay, he's on the verge of a return. He's been out for over a month now, again with a very nondescript, just referenced as a knock, nothing more than that, but he is working his way back up. Probably just game week 36 came a little bit too quick, so wouldn't be surprised to see him back in the squad in game week 37. So that's it for now. If you have any questions, you know where you can always hit myself up at Ben Dinnery, or Jason McKenna at Jason_R_McKenna, or check out the PremierInjuries.com injury table.